You might think that Jordan Walsh is ready to step straight into a starting. Oh, fuck off. 1 sec. You might think that Jordan Walsh is ready to step straight into the rotation. You might think that Jordan Walsh needs to spend a year in the G League. No matter which side of the fence you sit on, you're probably at least 50% right. We're going to dive into it. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor. I'm joined by my Celtics blog colleague's the word, Jeff Pratt, also over at DraftKings, recently made an appearance on ESPN. Man, Jeff, I'm happy to have you here, dude.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to talk about Jordan Walsh.
So which side of the fence do you fall on first and foremost? Do you think he's a G League guy for the year, or do you think he cracks the rotation for the year?
Somewhere in the middle. I definitely don't think he's a G League guy. Like he might get a little bit of stints down there every so often if he goes, 10, 15 games during the season without playing just to make sure he's getting touches and staying fresh. But in terms, I'd lean more towards the fact that he's going to be, or the likelihood that he's going to be in the rotation in some sort of role. And I think realistically, as of right now, how the roster is currently constructed, him and O'Shea Brissett kind of combining to fill the Grant Williams hole in terms of a perimeter defender and a guy who can provide a lot of energy on the bench, because we know that's what O'Shea Brissett brings as well. And, whoever's got the hot hand between the two of them, especially shooting the ball, because neither of them can do it particularly well. Obviously, we saw Walsh shoot the ball pretty well in Summer League for the Celtics. But between those two, I think we're going to see some regular rotational minutes.
See, so this is the thing for me, right? Like the Celtics lost their two best perimeter defenders, not just one. Now, you can argue that Derek White's perimeter defense is a step below Marcus Smart's, but not so far below that he's a huge drop-off in that starting five. But at the end of the day, you still lose Marcus Smart's perimeter defense. You lose Grant Williams' perimeter defense. You've needed a wing to play a backup role to Tatum and Brown for the past 12 to 18 months. It just hasn't been on the cards, really. Hasn't been anyone available. I'm not looking for Jordan Walsh to be an offensive producer. If you can just get him to sit in the corner, shoot, catch and shoot threes, and literally just guard his ass off, there's a role for him there. I'm actually higher on him than I am O'Shea Brissett right now. I don't know why. I just think that Brissett didn't really pop with the Pacers last season. And they're a rebuilding team. And if you don't pop with the Pacers, I'm not very confident you're going to pop with the Celtics, right? Obviously, you're going to have additional spacing to work with. You're more talented guys around you can set you up easier. But from as far as Jordan Walsh, I think that the Celtics really need that dog defensively, and plugging him into a 10 to 12 minute a night role or 8 to 10 minute a night role and kind of bedding him slowly throughout the regular season and then perhaps incrementally increasing his exposure to higher level competition. That makes perfect sense to me. I don't see a benefit to putting him in the G League because he's not raw enough on the defensive end. He can kind of coast with his defense and build his offense on the fly.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think that compared to O'Shea and him, who's popping more, who you're higher on, I think you can make the argument that Brissett's a type of player who needs a lot of talent around him to produce. But that being said, he was playing with one of the best playmakers in the league last season with Tyrese Halliburton, and he wasn't producing that well from an offensive perspective. And I think we both of us can agree that Jordan Walsh's defensive ceiling is miles ahead of O'Shea Brissett. And it's not even really Brissett's fault. Walsh he's a physical specimen. He is so long. We saw it in Summer League where you talk about the Celtics needing that dog, where Boston would, every time he steps on the floor, inbounding the ball, he is full court pressing. And he was really harassing guys with his length. He was giving them significant problems. So I agree with what you said. If they can just stick him in the corner and he can shoot, 35%. 36% from three. He doesn't need to be a 40% three-point shooter, but just a guy who they can kick the ball to, and he's a threat to knock down corner threes. That's the most important part. We don't need defenses sagging off of him and saying, hey, this is Grant Williams when he came into the league 2.0, when he went 0 for 25. And I was actually in the building when he made his first three-pointer. The entire crowd just erupted. We don't need that again with Jordan Walsh. And I think he's obviously much more capable offensively coming into the league than Grant Williams was. He's a bit raw on that end, but defensively, he's going to give you all he has. He's going to make life hell for whoever he's guarding. And most importantly, one thing that we haven't really touched on here is the Celtics need a wing, whether it's Jordan Walsh, O'Shea Brissett, another guy who they need to bring in, just a third wing, Sam Hauser to an extent, although he fills a different role than those guys, who can just come in and take some time away from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, let them sit on the bench for an extra 4 to 5 minutes per game. Not a lot, but those minutes accumulate. And as we've seen from the Celtics throughout the years, when they made the NBA Finals 2 seasons ago, Tatum at that point was completely spent. We saw those guys start to get a little fatigued down the stretch this season. So we need another rotational wing who can just come in and give those guys some time to rest.
And that's an important part, right? Like, but you've got to be able to come in and at least produce to a certain level. The biggest issue for a lot of teams, not just Boston, you look at the Warriors last season, whenever Steph went to the bench, their offense fell off a cliff. When Tatum goes to the bench, everything stagnates. It becomes more isolation heavy. The ball movement stops. Finding somebody that's a willing passer, that if he does get the ball in his hands, he's not instantly looking for offense. Finding who's like for his own offense, sorry. Finding somebody that's just going to be a cog in that kind of rotation, that's going to allow things to unfold, and then trusting that Jaylen Brown's going to at least attempt to take a step forward in terms of playmaking. Porzingis being there is going to allow a two-man game to unfold there. That makes a lot more sense to me. I feel like Brissett is a little bit more ready-made offensively. He can penetrate, he can get downhill. Struggles to finish when he gets to the rim, but he can get to the rim. But that's not really what the Celtics need from their backup wing. What they need is just somebody to really plug and play that 3-and-D role and play at a really high level. Now, I don't remember who I was listening to. It was on the Basketball Index podcast, and they were ranking the best 3-and-D wings in the NBA. And whoever it was, I'm really sorry, I'd cite them if I could remember. They rank Jason Tatum as the best 3-and-D wing in the NBA. And the argument is he's the best 3-and-D wing. We just don't put him in that category because he can do so much more, right? But if you're trying to plug and play a guy in as a backup for Jason Tatum, 3-and-D is exactly what you need. And I think that that's where we can get Jordan Walsh. Like you said, you don't want him to go over 25 at the start, but I'm big on shooting. Gravity doesn't come from making shots. It comes from taking shots. A coach will make sure his defense is positioned to limit your ability to convert your shooting chances. But if you're shooting consistently, the defense has to respect you because you're in the NBA. Anyone in the NBA should be able to make an open three eventually, right? So the ability, the willingness to take shots will generate as much gravity as a very consistent 3-point shot, especially in the first few months. Now, if you go 20 games with one made free on 4 attempts a night, people are probably going to start to sag off for a little while.
Yeah, they're going to start to welcome those shots at that point. They're going to start to sag off and hope and beg for you to shoot the ball. And we've seen that a couple times in the NBA. It's a very rare instance where you get a player who cannot make a 3-pointer but loves to take them. We've seen that with Russell Westbrook over the years, Kelly Oubre to an extent, who's currently, hey, maybe that's a guy who comes to the Celtics at some point. 20-point per game scorer last year. Now the efficiency was horrendous. I believe he shot 31.9% from 3, just off the top of my head. It was really bad. But I think people get so caught up on when they're looking for edge pieces, rotational fringe guys, they're looking for explosive offensive options. And that simply is not what this roster needs behind Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as a rotational wing. Would I have loved to get a guy like Josh Richardson back, who is a capable offensive player? Certainly. But the reason why I wanted Josh Richardson wasn't because of his offense. It's because he could guard 1 through 4 effectively. And we've seen that in his system. We need to stress defense. The Celtics need to stress defense with this addition. And whoever they put in after Tatum and Brown in that third rotational wing spot. And they've got a couple guys, between Hauser, Brissett, Jordan Walsh. Each one of those players offers a little bit of a different thing to the game. So I think that whoever it is, they got to ride the hot hand, and the player needs to be playing with confidence. That's the most important thing. We can't have another situation where Romeo Langford checks into the game a couple of years ago and everyone knows he's not a threat because he doesn't believe he's a threat. The most important thing besides shot taking is having confidence in how you play. And Jordan Walsh, to his credit, has not lacked confidence. We saw him in Summer League. He's making shots. He's talking to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the sideline. He admitted that they weren't even noticing him on the floor when he was trying to have conversations with them. But it seems like he plays with a lot of swagger, and the way he goes out and competes, he's a guy who wants to win more than anything else. Seems like he's going to fit right into this squad.
First of all, Romeo Langford is a player I would die on the hill at, that if his mentality was just a little bit more Jordan Walsh like, he'd be elite, because you don't win, like, what was he? Mr. Indiana. Yeah, you
Mr.
don't win
Indiana.
that easily, man. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is that wingspan. You alluded to it earlier in this discussion. When the Celtics went zone during summer league, they kind of looked similar to how Miami set up their zone during the bubble, right? Which is an inverted 2-3. So instead of an inverted 3-2. So instead of having your bigs at the back or your lengthy guys at the back protecting the rim, you put them up at the front of the perimeter, and then you have smaller guys down at the back. And the idea is you can pinch, you can switch, but you keep the structure of your zone. Jordan Walsh is the ideal strong side wing defender in that zone, because, and I mean, I can't stress this enough, with his arms open when he pinches, he takes away the entire driving lane just by sliding his feet. And I don't know whether, and this has been an argument or a discussion that a bunch of people have had, I don't know whether the amount of zone we saw in Summer League is a prelude to what we're going to see in the regular season due to Kristaps Porzingis. Maybe Cassell's brought in some ideas of running some zone. Maybe Charles Lee's actually tried to bring it up. We don't know the discussions going on there. But what we do know is that if you can start to implement some zone and utilize Jordan Walsh's length that way and limit the reliance on him trying to shut guys down one-on-one or have fighting over screens and switches, you could find quite a viable second unit defensive structure that way. I just wanted to see if you're on board with zone, or if you're like, no, this isn't high school. I want guys switching and guiding man to man.
Hey, I love zone. I love zone. And this is coming from a guy who all I did was play defense in high school. You know, I couldn't make a shot to save my life for the most part. But I think that it's not what we saw in Summer League. Obviously, they played a ton of zone. And I think people, recency bias is one hell of a drug. It's the most dangerous drug in the NBA. So people see something like that and they think, oh, wow, the Celtics are going to run 75% zone this year. That's not the case. You don't have to be concerned about that. That's not going to be the case. But what it could say is, hey, maybe we're going to mix in zone 10 to 15% of the time, which in the past wasn't even close to the number we saw under Ime Udoka and Joe Mazzulla. Obviously, they've used it a little bit at times when they really need to try to mix things up. But I think with the roster they have the ability to play both man and zone extremely effectively. And with the length they have, they can play a variety of zones, whether it's the inverted 3-2, whether it's even a 1-3-1, a box and one to an extent if you have a high energy guy like Jordan Walsh. They have the pieces and most importantly, the length to play it. Now, the question is, do you have the buy-in with the zone? Because you need constant communication. It's not easy to play zone. I think a lot of people believe that when you set out to play zone, it's because you're not capable of playing man. And to an extent, sometimes that's true if we're playing pickup basketball in the park. But in the NBA, when you have teams who can shoot the ball at an incredibly high level, your zone needs to be so compact and tight. There cannot be any miscommunication whatsoever. Otherwise, you're giving up a wide open three. And 9 times out of 10, if it's a wing or a guard, you're going to get buried for giving up a wide open three. So it's not risky per se. And I respect that they're looking to do it more. I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation in the regular season. We're going to see some things from Joe Mazzulla that we did not see whatsoever last season, because he has a full off season with a new coaching staff, new group of players to implement his system. Zone could be one part of that. And I'm interested to see how much they utilize it, but I'm on board. If it works, it works.
I just want to see less Spain actions and I'll be absolutely fine. Right. It felt like that was the only thing on his playbook for the majority of the second half of the season. I'm just like, dude, run something else. I don't know whether Jordan Walsh is going to be featured in any special way at all in that second unit. Maybe they try and funnel guys, if they're icing pick and rolls, maybe they try and funnel everybody towards Jordan Walsh, who's like forcing them baseline. Maybe they ask Jordan Walsh to be a weak side helper in a similar position to what Rob was in, just because of that length and intensity. The only answer I've got right now is I am 90% I am 85 to 90% convinced that Jordan Walsh will be part of this rotation, or at least in touching distance of a rotation spot to begin the season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we'll get a little more clarity on what they expect from him and what to expect from the rotation in the coming weeks as they start to fill out this roster. Because I think we had a piece come out on Celtics blog, a roundtable, one more move the Celtics need to make. And a lot of us, myself included, said, hey, bringing in another rotational wing is probably the most important thing they need to do. So whether that's a Kelly Oubre on a vet minimum deal who's taking a lot less than realistically he would like to get, or whether that's like a Derek Jones Jr. guy and a guy who's similar to Jordan Walsh, something like that. The level of player they bring in, and they have a couple of roster spots to fill that out over the coming weeks, is going to say a lot about what they think of the current wing group they have.
Oh, for sure. And whether or not wing is quite a broad spectrum of positional availability as well. They could bring somebody in that doesn't even affect the way Jordan Walsh is going to be played. Maybe they play a little bit bigger and Jordan Walsh gets to stay in that rotation. There is going to be an episode on Kelly Oubre because that's an interesting one just because of where he was playing. A lot of talent around him got hurt throughout the season. And when you play with Gordon Hayward, that's always to be expected. Unfortunately, no offense, Hayward. Please don't come for me. Right then. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, Jeff. Before you go, do you want to let everyone know where they can find your stuff? Because I know you're recently launched a YouTube channel too.
Yeah, I did recently launch a YouTube channel. It's Jeff Pratt Talks Hoops. You can find the Twitter or X account for that at Pratt Talks Hoops. You can find me on Twitter at by Jeff Pratt. Everything I do will be posted under those socials. So thank you so much for having me, Adam. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man. And you're welcome on here anytime. If you've got a topic and you just want to chew it up with somebody to speak with, I'm around, man. I'm always around at my desk. It's not healthy. Everybody make sure to hit that subscribe button and I'll be back again tomorrow. Peace.